now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Angie Sosa. I'm the Associate Director for Off-Campus Engagement here at Tufts University Residential Life and Learning. First, let me welcome you all to Tufts University. I anticipate there's some folks here who are brand new to the university, maybe some folks who were doing their undergraduate programs here, but in either case, we're very welcome or very happy to have you. So welcome. We're going to go over lots of information today, but it is going to be fairly broad. So one of the things that I will make a note of is if there's questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I may not be able to answer them directly during the presentation, but I will get to them towards the end. And you can also feel free to contact us at offcampusinfo@tufts.edu. That way we can answer your questions at a later date. We can set up a time to chat on a more one-on-one specific situation, but this is going to be a very overarching general conversation for our students. We are predominantly focused on our graduate students today. May have some students who are international students, may have some students who are more local, and so we'll be able to cover a lot of those topics. I'm going to just kind of show what we're going to go over today. So we're going to talk about what off-campus engagement is, what the resources are that we provide, and things that we're hoping to grow. This is an area in residential life that we're looking to expand upon. And so we're really excited to get folks involved. That includes you. So even though you're brand new to the university, or maybe you've been here in an undergrad setting, but you're a new grad, we want you to be involved as best as possible. So we'll go over what some of those things look like. We're also going to talk about some important things to consider, such as the search tips, things to consider when it comes to budgeting, basic general considerations, such as looking for roommates, how that process works, ways to go about it successfully. We're also going to talk about our students who are non-local. So that includes folks who are at different parts of the country or international students, and how to do a search when you're not local. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to try our best to make that process a little bit more able to be navigated from you all. And then mostly we really want to ensure that you all are remaining engaged while living off campus. You know, if you're someone who has lived in an on-campus situation before, you're kind of used to maybe being in the middle of things happening on campus. And when you live away from the campus, it can be really easy to kind of separate from that. I have had some folks say that it can feel a little bit isolating and whatnot. And so we do want to make sure that you all have as many resources and thing as available to be an active part of our community. To kind of start, just to kind of go over what are some things that off-campus engagement provides. We have a number of websites that we kind of manage, though we are kind of in the process of consolidating many of them. Our two most basic ones are our off-campus at tufts.edu, which is the larger photo on the right-hand side here. You can also scan that QR code and it should take you directly to that website. At this page, this is a really helpful resource in being able to actually locate off-campus housing. When local area landlords or brokers or anybody contact us that having spaces available for rent, we do recommend that they all post it onto this page, so that way it's all accessible in one location. So you can search for housing in the area. You can look for roommates. You can find general resources to kind of help you with navigating certain things or having questions that you might have, getting those things answered, etc. So we would definitely recommend taking a look at that website. The cool thing with that website also, we won't go into too much detail there, but the roommates section, you'll be able to find folks from Tufts University, you'll be able to find folks from other local universities. And so that can be really beneficial to kind of opening your map of finding folks to kind of help with various things. The other thing is our Canvas page. So you may be familiar with Canvas or something like Blackboard or something like that. Many of the classes here at Tufts utilize the Canvas site. And so we thought it was beneficial to kind of create a similar area, something that students are familiar with. And here it's going to have a lot of resource information. So whether that is, you know, how to navigate certain situations, or if you're an international student and you're looking specifically for like, how do I deal with, you know, a landlord who is not renting to me because of this. We can kind of provide you with certain things to kind of help you with navigating what those processes are. And so the Canvas page will have a lot of information like that. It's also a really good place for you to engage with other students. And this is specifically for our Tufts students. So you do have to have a Tufts login in order to get onto that Canvas page. Another thing that's not posted here, but it is something that we do manage, is a subletting e-list. And so we collect information from students who might be going abroad, or maybe they're graduating early and their lease is still going on, but they're not planning to stay in the area. So if you're someone who is struggling to locate something, or maybe you're only planning to be here for a short period of time and you're looking for temporary housing, please feel free to reach out to us. And again, I'll have that information towards the end of this webinar, because we can connect you with folks who might be looking for roommates or might be looking for someone to take over their space for a period of time as well. And that can help with at least kind of navigating the right now type of situation. So lots of different options that we can work for with you, and let us know if you have any questions about those things. So some of the stuff that off-campus engagement can assist with is things like roommate mediations, conflict resolution with a team member. Think of it this way. Sometimes you may not know the person and that situation could be really challenging, but sometimes you might know the person and you're not sure how to have those tough conversations. Getting someone from our office can be beneficial. We're there to help mediate, to facilitate a conversation, really want to ensure that you all are being heard. And so those are things that can be really beneficial. Lots of people think that living with their best friend is going to be a great experience, and it's not necessarily always the greatest experience. So we do want to make sure that, you do feel like you have some support there in navigating some of those conversations. We can review and navigate some stuff that may come about with, landlord or property management issues. We do not review leases. And this is something I want to make sure that folks are aware of. A lease is a legal document, and we are not legal professionals. So it's really important that, if you have specific questions about things like that, is something that you can follow up with your broker if you're working with them, with the landlord or property manager, to kind of clarify. Or you could potentially seek out, short advice seeking lawyers, or giving lawyers rather. They do exist. It can be a little bit challenging to locate them, but they can help you with navigating certain bits of information to ensure that you're not running into something challenging there. We can help you with searching for housing and subletting opportunities. We're not here to really find the space and give it to you. That's not our particular role, but we can help you with navigating how to go through that process. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. And then, of course, maintaining your involvement here on campus while you're living off campus. There's a link here. You probably can't access it, but we do have information about learning your rights and responsibilities as tenants. So that way you are not caught in a difficult situation. So that's something to really consider and think about prior to signing anything. So just to kind of jump into things about what your housing search tips are, for many of you, you might not be here. And when I say that, you might not be local in terms of, being able to see a space. Because of that, we don't want you to send things ahead of time. And when I say ahead of time, I'm not meaning you have to pay the day that you arrive or anything like that. But it's really important that, like, you sign documents, that you have a little bit of more tangible information about the space. Unfortunately, scams happen. We are in a major city in America, and there are a lot of folks who will take the opportunity to scam folks. And so we don't want you to lose any money if we can avoid it. It is important to try and see the space in person, and we know that that can be really challenging. And so working with other people who might be nearby, working with a broker or an agent could be beneficial because they are more licensed. They are the person that's there. They can do a FaceTime calls with you, etc. And those are things that are really going to be beneficial to navigating that process for you. Other things is when you're looking for roommates and whatnot, we want to make sure that you're clear about your expectations. So, really sitting with yourself and determining like what those particular things are is important. What are going to be your deal breakers? Are finances a concern? Do you have a specific cutout point? If you are working, you've got a group of people, okay, who's going to be responsible for bringing certain things, etc. Those are ways to really ensure that, the people that you're going to be living with have some understanding of how you expect to live. And that way it's potentially not an uncomfortable situation. The other thing to really keep in mind is to prepare for unfurnished spaces. Um, we say that because there are a lot of spaces that are going to be very bare. There are some ways that you can find inexpensive ways to furnish your space. We'll share some of those details a little bit later as well. But we want to make sure that those are just kind of the base level of things that you're considering. These are also things that are going to really add to what you're going to have to consider in terms of money wise to be able to furnish your space, feel comfortable in your space, etc. So those are things that we want you to at least know right off the bat, things that you should be considering, things that you should think about when you're trying to determine what your budget is for looking for an off-campus space. So just the general stuff, things to consider. Most leases in the area are going to be 12-month leases. That means for a full calendar year, you are leasing the space to live in. It's a rental lease. It is not a housing license agreement. For those of you who may have lived in an on-campus dormitory during your undergraduate experience or anything like that, that is called a housing license agreement. It's similar, but not the same. You have a little bit more freedom when you're living off campus. You're not necessarily renting furniture per se. You might be able to do that in an off-campus space, but that comes and goes depending on the situation. So those are some differences. You do want to make sure that you are reading through that lease. If you're not understanding something, we want to make sure that you are connecting with appropriate people. There are lots of websites that kind of break down specific information about what X section means. That way it's a little bit easier to understand. You can ask the people that you're signing with to further explain. That lease is also not confirmed until you have signed it. So if there's something that you feel is missing, you can negotiate that type of information with your landlord, just to throw that in there. Finances, a little bit different. These are going to be monthly payments to your landlord or your property manager. If you're getting utilities separately, such as they're not being like your gas or electric is not included in your rent costs, that's going to be in the student's name. So that's going to be a monthly bill that you have to set up on your own as well. When you lived in an on-campus situation, it could be a little bit different because you paid things up front. So those are things to really keep in mind. Just a word of advice is really making sure that you've kind of got that money set aside at least a couple of months ahead of time. Can be challenging, but we definitely recommend that. So then that way you don't find yourself in a challenging situation. Personal items, you're going to be responsible for providing your own furniture. You're going to be responsible for losses or damages. So we highly recommend seeking out renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is very inexpensive. You can get it for as low as $10 a month. If you pay for a year in advance, you might get a little bit of a discount, and there's lots of different companies that do that. If you have a vehicle or anything like that, you should be able to bundle with it. And that means you can get a discount just for having multiple different types of insurances with them, with that company. If your family owns a home, or maybe you own a home in a different area and there's homeowners insurance, sometimes those policies also will have an extension for an apartment or something like that, or living in a dorm, a college dorm, or something like that. So you should definitely reach out to your homeowner's insurance company if that's something that you have available to you. So getting into the numbers, a lot of people are wondering what is typical for the area. You can see that the rent costs that we have listed here are $800 to $1,300 a month, approximately. That is a big gap, and I recognize that. Something to keep in mind is that it's really going to depend on the landlord. There is nothing that states that it has to be a minimum or it has to be a maximum. A lot of times landlords are going to be basing their rents based on other landlords in the area. So that's all supply and demand. So things to really consider is, you might find a fantastic space that is $1,300 a month, and that could be really expensive. So what are the things that you are willing to negotiate on or not necessarily take so that you can save a bit of money? That could be a car space. Maybe that $1,300 includes a parking space, and the landlord is willing to knock $100 off per month in case you don't want or don't need the car, things of that nature. You might also find a space that's $800 a month, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad space, but it also means that it could be a less fancy looking space. Um, those are all things to really consider. I do want to urge people to use their due diligence when they're searching for stuff. A lot of times you can get what you pay for. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if you're finding a very updated space in the middle of Boston with marble countertops and a wonderful view, and it's only costing you $600 a month, that is likely a scam. So we want to make sure that you all are using your due diligence and ensuring that you understand like that is likely not the case. Utilities such as gas, electric, internet, I would estimate about $150 per month per person. I say this because those are things that are going to fluctuate. Consider it this time. Say in the winter time, you might be using more gas because of heat. You might be using more electric because of heat or anything like that. In the summertime, air conditioners running that might cost a lot. Your internet, depending on the speeds, depending on the company, those are things that are going to change as well. So those are things you really should consider. Most places are around 3 to 5 people per apartment. So I would estimate that $150 per person should be pretty good to be able to handle all of those utilities. But a really good trick you can do here is that you can call the utility companies in advance. Just give them the address of the space and say if they can give you an estimate on what the average costs are for the utilities per month. That'll help you kind of figure those things out. Food, transportation, and personal items are all variable costs. So it's really about you determining, what are your needs, what are your things that you can put off to the side. Um, if you have a vehicle and you were hoping to bring it, consider what that cost is going to be. Something I do want to note is if you're coming from out of state and you have a vehicle, it can be really difficult to secure a permit on the street for street parking in the city if your vehicle is not registered in the state of Massachusetts. So that is something that you would need to consider. If you're dead set on bringing a vehicle with you, you might want to find a space that has access to a parking space or a garage or something like that. But keep in mind that that could be an additional cost for you. Some of the things I always mention with folks in terms of like food and personal items is really to find ways to budget appropriately. Perhaps using like a wholesale club or something like that, splitting certain costs with your housemates can be really beneficial. That's good ways to really save money. And the other thing, it's right here in the middle of the page, is a really important consideration. You could potentially be paying up to the amount of 4 months rent. There's an asterisk there because it's not you paying for a month in advance. Those costs can be the first month of rent. So say your lease is starting in September. So that could be your September rent. It could be the last month of rent, so the following August could be paid. It could be a security deposit, which shouldn't be more than the cost of 1 month rent. So, those are things that, for incidentals after you move out, say there's damage or anything that needs to be done, your landlord's going to take from that security deposit. And then also, if you're working with a broker or an agent, there could be the cost of their finder's fee or a broker's fee, which shouldn't be more than the cost of 1 month's rent. So just to kind of clarify that a little bit, say for instance, your rent is $1,000 a month. You live in an apartment with 3 other people, so your rent, everybody pays $1,000 a month. That's $4,000 a month. That means that you would be responsible for up to 4 times your rent. So if you're responsible for $1,000, you could be responsible for the upfront cost of $4,000. Your larger group could be up to $16,000. And that is a lot of money. But those are things to really consider. So when you're having the conversations with potential roommates, when you're talking to landlords, when you're talking to brokers, ask those questions so that you know what you're getting into. With that said, something that's really important to note is that you are able to negotiate some of these things. So even though it says, yes, first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, broker's fee, or anything, you could potentially negotiate with a landlord to not pay the last month's rent. So that kind of saves you, one of those payments. You could negotiate to only pay first and last month's rent and not a security deposit. So that kind of saves you that thing. But these are all things that will come back later. So I do want you to keep that in mind. Chances are, if you are working with a broker, you're not going to be able to negotiate that away. So I want to make sure that that is something that's clear. There are some landlords who will pay that cost. So those are conversations to have as well. But there are also ways to negotiate payment plans and whatnot with your landlord. So having those conversations are really important just to kind of see what's feasible. If you're moving in September and you're signing a lease today, perhaps you can pay 1 to 2 months now, and then a month from now, pay another month's worth, et cetera, et cetera. So that way it kind of like helps cut down on the starkness of that payment right up front. So some other tips for budgeting, as I mentioned earlier, we were talking about the furniture thing. Tufts is kind of in partnership with MIT's Furniture Exchange, which is kind of like a large thrifting space. They've got a warehouse located in Cambridge, so not too far away, and they have lots of different items that are available for purchase, for a lower cost purchase. You just need to show your Tufts ID and you should be able to get in and kind of shop around the types of stuff they have. They have couches, they have tables, they have dressers and things of that nature. They have stopped selling mattresses, so that is something to really consider. But that is something that is really beneficial. I know a lot of folks are no longer on Facebook, but Facebook has a lot of really good groups, such as like Everything Free pages. So you can locate stuff as Everything Free Medford, Everything Free Somerville, etc. You can also go on Facebook Marketplace and locate things for lower costs, etc. So those are ways to really saving on some money. As I've already mentioned, the Wholesale Club can help with saving funds on day-to-day needs. You can also familiarize yourself with local resources such as food pantries or free fridges. The Tufts free food e-list is really beneficial for any events that might be happening on campus. Say they have additional stuff left over, and who wants to pay for lunch today? Maybe not me, but then you might get an alert that there's extra food available. So you can pop over there to check that out. And that's also available on the Tufts mobile app. So those are things to really look for. And then if you're eligible, I would definitely recommend trying to look for on-campus or local jobs in the community. Handshake is what the Tufts University campus utilizes for local jobs. Specifically on campus jobs. So I would definitely recommend starting to look at a lot of that stuff now because a lot of things are getting posted. But those are really good ways to kind of like make and save some money in the next couple of months while you're looking. As we've kind of mentioned in terms of like what the costs are looking for, this kind of gives a little bit of a breakdown in terms of amount of money that you would typically use for your rent. So this is something that is shared with us by our partners over in financial aid, just to kind of give an estimate. It's something that we go over with a lot of our students who are on financial aid packages. Financial aid is typically considered for the 9-month period that you are actively in school. So if you're receiving financial aid to cover housing costs or anything like that, keep that in mind. When you're living off campus, it's a 12-month lease. So that's going to look a little bit different. I'm not going to get into the specifics with the numbers here on the screen just because that could change per person, et cetera. But it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what you're working with. Basically, you want to try and live below what your means are, right? So if you only are, able to afford $2,000 a month, you really need to consider what is your food going to look like? What is your rent going to look like? What are your utilities going to look like? And again, similar to what I was mentioning earlier with those upfront fees, you really want to make sure that you're able to kind of have those conversations, negotiate with landlords, et cetera, see if you can pay 2 instead of 3 or 3 instead of 4. See if you can negotiate a timeline of when to pay those things. Those are really beneficial. Something that's also here is the option for subletting. So if that's something that is a major concern for you and you're not sure if you're ready to kind of lock something in or you can't find something, you can always contact our office and we can help connect you with students who are looking to sublet their spaces. As I mentioned, there's lots of students who might be going abroad or maybe have graduated early, so they have a space available that they're looking for someone to take over their lease for, 4 to 6 months. This again is a breakdown of the cost, just kind of seeing what you're looking at in terms of a general breakdown. As I mentioned, most people in the area are living in around a 3 to 5 person apartment. This is obviously giving you like a 4 person-ish type of scenario, but this is really individual based. So your overall yearly total is going to be anywhere from around 13,000 to 21, 22,000 over a 12-month period. And that's depending on what your food, or if you decide to get a Tufts meal plan, those are still available to you, utilities, rent, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all things to really consider. So if you're ready to begin your search, I want to make sure that you have a lot of different options here. Finding everything in one location is not necessarily going to work. So you really want to make sure that you expand your search. You could use Facebook, you can use word of mouth, Craigslist, Zillow, apartments.com. You can use the group pages that might be associated with your program. You could, any chat functions or anything like that. Those are all definitely useful, but we want to make sure that in any case, in any situation that you're using to locate spaces, that you are asking lots of questions, you're doing your due diligence to get as much information beforehand as possible. Apartments.com, just so you know, the page that we all have off campus at tufts.edu is actually in partnership with apartments.com. So a lot of the information that's on that page is also pulled over from the apartments.com main page. The cool thing about our page in particular is that you do have to log in utilizing your Tufts credentials. And so you'll have access to certain information based on the fact that you signed in with that information. If you don't sign in with that information, you might still get some information, but not all of it. So we want to make sure that you all understand what that looks like. When you're looking for a roommate, we want to make sure that you're having tough conversations. So being honest with yourself, your friends, potential roommates, about what those needs or those wants are going to be are really important. Even the best of friends are not necessarily going to be the best roommates. So we want to make sure that, you're asking and having those tough conversations. If you're not sure how to have those tough conversations, you can always reach out to us. It is not simple to get out of a lease. As I mentioned, a lease is a legal document. So if you decided to leave, you're still going to be financially responsible unless you got someone to take over that space. Also, getting someone to take over your space is not as simple as just finding someone to come and move in. There can be paperwork involved. Your landlord or broker might want to be involved. There's lots of steps there. So if you're not sure how to manage those types of situations, we do want you to come to us, talk to us about the situation. Let's see if there's a way that we could mediate the conversation. Maybe there's ways to maybe ease some of the tension that's going on there so it's a little bit comfortable for you to remain there. But if we're not getting anywhere, we can talk to you about how to navigate what those processes are with your landlord or other folks who are involved in that conversation. When you're vetting roommates, just the general stuff that we recommend looking into is consider people whose living practices are similar to your own. So most oftentimes you're going to have your own bedroom. But, are the people you live with clean? Are you clean? Are you someone who likes to utilize your space just as a resting pad? Or do you want to have lots of people over and have events and stuff like that? That can be really challenging if you've got two groups of people or two people who have opposing methods of living. So we want to make sure that when you're having conversations and trying to find roommates, those are some of the conversations that you're having. What are your likes and dislikes? What are you willing to negotiate on? What are things that you can let go of, etc. And we want to make sure that, you're being fair in this situation. If you have expectations of someone else, they should also be free to have certain expectations of you all. But, I think it's really important to ensure that you're being fair and honest in that situation so that folks are not necessarily feeling like they can't be comfortable in their own living space, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be most important. We also recommend try to get to know the person before you select them right away. Don't judge them based on your initial interaction. Some of those interactions can be really quick. Think of, having job interviews. If you've ever had a job interview, you're trying to sell yourself as the best person for that role, right? And so you're going to highlight a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, maybe it's great that you have the finances to be able to manage it and you're generally someone who likes to be living in a clean space, but maybe you can be a little bit messy from time to time, or maybe your bedroom is cleaner than you keep the rest of the house, et cetera, or vice versa. So those are all things to really consider, and we definitely recommend having multiple conversations. If there are multiple people living in a space, it could be beneficial to have everyone meet. That's not always the easiest thing to do, but having those conversations can be really beneficial to ensuring that everybody in the home are going to get along, at least to a level where living together is going to be comfortable. For students who are non-local, this can be really challenging, and we definitely recognize that. It can be incredibly difficult if you're not able to come to the area to look for housing, or you don't know anybody in the area or anything like that. This kind of goes back to the conversation we were having a little bit earlier in regards to avoiding scams and making sure that you're not sending your money to anyone right off the bat before you've been able to see something. If you're not able to get to the area, how are you going to be able to see that? We totally understand that. Our office is kind of here to help you navigate the process, but we're not the group who will find a space for you or will tour a space for you. That's not something that we have the ability to do. And so when you're finding your roommates, we definitely recommend, if you can find roommates prior to locking down a space, that is really important. Talk with one another. Is anybody able to get here a little bit early? Is anybody already here who can maybe serve as the proxy during that stuff? So we think it's beneficial to try and meet people early. That means utilizing our Canvas page, utilizing our off-campus pages, or your program or school message boards or group chats or anything, just to try and find someone who's going to be beneficial. See if those people are nearby. Can they serve as a proxy? Are you able to, work with an agent? As I mentioned, that is an additional cost, but it could be a little bit more beneficial to have somebody secure who's here, who's working for you. Yes, you're going to have to pay them that finder's fee, but they're here and they can do a lot of the legwork. So that is something to really consider. It is, challenging when you're considering the finances and all that, but I think those are all important conversations to have with yourself, have with your family and friends, and have with your potential roommates to really determine what's going to be the easiest thing for you all. For international students, I know that this can be a little bit more challenging, because some of the stuff that's going to be asked of you during that application process might not be stuff that you already have. Um, some folks might want to run a credit check. In order to do that, they're going to need your social security number, but you might not have a social security number. Usually, this is provided to students who have an on-campus job. It's a way for them to ensure that you're active, you're getting paid properly, that appropriate taxes are being taken out, etc. But if you have never been to the country before, you might not have that available to do that. And even if you do have a social security number, you might not have an established credit history. For those of you who are not aware, credit history is just a way to ensure that your credit worthiness, so you're somebody who takes care of their bills, pays bills on time, doesn't default on things, etc. It makes it a little bit more secure for the renter or the landlord to feel comfortable with renting to you. They can make sure that they're not going to be dealing with someone who is not paying their costs or anything. And that can be really challenging. If you don't have a credit history, you could be asked to provide a cosigner or a guarantor. And that is going to be someone who does have a credit history. So more than likely someone with a United States citizenship or social security number with a credit history, et cetera. So those are things to really consider. Um, there are companies that will serve as a guarantor for you, but a lot of them can come with hefty costs. So we definitely want you to consider those things before you jump into it. There are also a lot of local landlords who are willing to work specifically with international students because they understand that there are some of those challenges. So one of the things is on our off-campus page, you can search for things that are international student friendly. And that likely means that they're aware of like some of the challenges that the students are running into, and they're willing to work with you. And that can be really challenging. I've had countless number of people contact me and say, oh, we got all the way through and then we had this roadblock and this is what held us up. So those are things that you should really consider if you're an international student prior to the process, just so you can make sure you've got everything kind of ready to go before applying, before getting into the whole process, because it can move very quickly. Um, they might want to see a proof of income. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a job. It could just mean here's, a screenshot of my bank account statement. More or less, they want to make sure that you have finances set aside to be able to cover the cost of certain things. So speak with whomever it is you're working with to determine like what is going to be a suitable use if that's something that they are requesting. For some folks, it could be an I-20 if you have an I-20 that you receive from the International Center here at Tufts. You could also reach out to them if you haven't figured all that stuff out and just kind of chat with them about that. It is your personal immigration document, so it's not like required that you show that information. It's not a financial guarantee or anything, but it at least shows a little bit of detail for the landlords. Um, you could request a residency verification. So say you're someone who has lived in on-campus housing before. So whether you've lived here at Tufts or you lived at a previous institution in the States, you can request some sort of residency verification that says, yes, this person lived here from this date to this date. Their monthly rent was estimated to be this amount, and yes, they have paid that, and there is no issues with them as a tenant. And then what also could be beneficial is proof of enrollment, which you can receive through student services. If you're a Fletcher student, you're going to go to the Fletcher School registrar to get that information, but that can also be really beneficial. So making sure you have those documents kind of ready to go is really important because it could be something that helps you in that process. And having that stuff ready to go right off the bat helps it move along a lot faster. Unfortunately, sometimes students are going to run into a situation where a landlord is like, I need this now because I've got another group of people who are ready to sign and they've got everything, ready to go. And you could potentially lose out on that. So getting the stuff prepared early is really important. Um, so to kind of move away from the financial side of things, we want to make sure that, after everything is said and done, that you are still able to be engaged while living here on campus or off campus, excuse me. So there's lots of different things that you can do. If you're a student in the arts, sciences, and engineering, you can participate in the Graduate Student Council. They've got lots of programs and things that they do. There's lots of student clubs and organizations, either through Campus Life or through the Fletcher School. So you can definitely check into those things. We send off-campus engagement newsletters. In the past, they were monthly. We're considering maybe increasing that. So that comes in an email form to you, and it just kind of goes over different things to consider. So whether there's events that's happening in the area or on campus or something like that, or perhaps, our team is going to be holding some sort of programs or events that we want to invite you to, you can participate with that. Those newsletters will also have really helpful information depending on the month. So say, for instance, we're approaching the winter time and you're not looking to stay around during that time. We might provide you some tips and tricks to ensuring that your space is going to be secure and safe during your absence. Things to have conversations with your landlord about: who's going to be responsible for shoveling, who's going to make sure that the heat is at a certain level in the apartment. And there's a lot that goes into those things. So we definitely recommend checking out those newsletters because they're going to have lots of useful information. We're going to try our best not to spam you with a lot of that information. And, that is something that you will be able to opt out of if you choose to. But I would definitely recommend checking it out just because it can be beneficial. You never know when you might need that information. You can follow us on Instagram. We are shared with the Tufts Residential Life page. So it's just at Tufts ORLL. We're going to host lots of different programs throughout the year. We're coming up with our calendar events, so that stuff will be posted on our Canvas page and will be included in our upcoming newsletters as well. And that's going to include, both our off-campus engagement programs that we're hosting, stuff that's happening in your local city or neighborhood, or in Boston. Um, and also, finding ways to explore your areas and get to know other people around you. Like I said, for many people who are living off campus, it can feel rather isolating to be so far away from campus and things that are happening. So we want to make sure that you're able to participate with stuff and meet other people, outside of your classes, outside of other things. So really participating in those things are going to be beneficial. There are also lots of stuff that, even though it is traditionally an on-campus thing, is still available to you. So if you'd like to sign up for a meal plan or whatever, size that might be, it could be the full meal plan. It could be just once in a while when you're on campus, so you can grab lunch really quick. Those are available to you. You still have access to Tufts Health Services. So if you need to see a doctor really quickly or anything like that, you can go there. Counseling and mental health services are also available to you. So there's access to counselors both during the day, after hours, etc. And then our partners over in student support can also help you. So whether you are someone who maybe needs to cut back on the type of, or the number of classes that you're taking or credits that you're taking, or needs to take a leave of absence or maybe work through something else, student support can really be a big beneficial resource for you all. And that information is also available on our website, will be available in our newsletter, on our Instagram page, etc. Lots of links here, but we'll make sure that you all get this information. I will definitely share those links with you all. So I'll email everybody who was in attendance and folks who also weren't able to attend. But this is kind of the bread and butter of what we're doing. We've got lots of different things available for you all. We want to make sure that you all have all the resources that we can provide to you available, and that you know that they're available. We definitely want to help you out. So if there's something that you feel like you should be doing, definitely reach out to us. We'd love to get those things type of going if it's stuff that we can do. Or if you're not sure how to start in a different area, let us know and we'll get you to that part. I'm going to leave it here. As I said, our email address, offcampusinfo@tufts.edu. So you can always reach out to us if you've got questions or you want to meet a more one-on-one side of thing. That way we can kind of help you through your individual issues. And I'm going to stop recording just so that we can go from there. Oh, I didn't mean to stop sharing. Excuse me.